Would I say if my son wants to start his own business, ATM business account, can he walk into a big box right now, or we're not there yet?
No, if you go into Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or Chase today, in virtually every case, and you tell them, I'm an ATM company, I'd like to open an account, do my vault cash, they'll show you the door.
Thank you. I would say just for our listeners, because this is for independent operators and for anybody that wants to get into business, if you don't mind providing that email me that information, and that way I can put it in the notes so people will have access to those financial institutions. I think that'll be great. One question that I have here is cash truly disappearing, or is it a narrative that has been overblown? Hello, everyone. Today, we are very excited to have one of our favorite conference producers and much funner places that we do. Today, I'm introducing Bruce Renard, Executive Director of NAC. Bruce has over 15 years of experience as a director with NAC. And Bruce, will you tell us more about yourself?
I'm happy to, Franco, and thank you for this opportunity to be with you and to speak with you today. I am, as you say, the Executive Director of the National ATM Council. We were founded back in 2011, and we started working on it in 2010, so that's where the 15 years comes from. And as a matter of fact, next year we'll be celebrating our 15th anniversary for NAC. So we're very proud and excited of that. And prior to coming to NAC, I had held a number of different roles in my career. I guess the foundation of my background is I'm an attorney of 45 years, and I've specialized in telecommunications and technology, and in the last 15, 20 years in the payments industry and ATMs.
That's quite a change.
Yeah, it's actually quite a good continuum there between the work that I did in telecommunications involving networking and the payments industry, which involves the same networking. It's telecommunication systems are the networks. When you hear of Visa and MasterCard and the other networks, those are actual telecommunications networks that allow the banks to communicate with one another, and in our case, allow our ATMs to communicate back and forth with the banks real time.
Yeah, that is true. What is the National ATM Council, Bruce?
NAC was created to specifically represent the independent ATM operators in the U.S. There's one other ATM trade association, which is ATMIA, and they are a global organization that represents the entire industry globally. We've, filled the need for a specific organization to represent the entrepreneurial side of the business in the U.S. exclusively. And it's kind of unique to the U.S. There is some other presence of ATM competition and entrepreneurialism in places like Canada and England. But most of the ATMs around the world are bank and operated machines. So the U.S., in our true capitalist entrepreneurial spirit, has brought competition into the ATM business. And, there are some differences of interest between the bank side of the business and the ATM side of the business. For the banks, ATMs are just one very small line of business. It's not really something that they've embraced greatly in the past. And even now, the banks are more and more outsourcing their ATM services to independent providers. Before there was competition in ATMs in the U.S., there were about 110,000 ATMs total in the country. Since competition came in, that number has gone up into the 500,000 range.
Wow.
So there was this great need out there for cash access in America that the banks really weren't suited to fill. Their business was banking at the bank branch. Now it's online, but they're not, really route operators, which is what you need to be to do the ATM business. And it lent itself much more to entrepreneurs who were happy to come and put ATMs in retail businesses around the country, as opposed to just having them at the bank branch.
Yeah. As an independent ATM operator, what should be my expectations with NAC?
Well, NAC, as an ATM operator, independent, we are your organization. We're your trade organization, the only organization 100% dedicated to representing exclusively the independent operators in the U.S. And so, we have hundreds of members who are ATM operators all over the country. We have a conference each year where everybody gets together, shares information, networks, sees the latest technology on the trade floor, learns a lot at our classes, and really gets a lot out of NAC just from our yearly conference. And then all year, we are in touch with our members constantly whenever anything relevant comes up that they need to know about or we need their help with. One of the big things I will say that NAC has done exclusively on behalf of the industry and the ATM operators, one of the very first things we did when we were first formed was we filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all ATM operators in America. That case is continued on for 14 years and is still active. I'm happy to say it's in its final phase.
Good.
We have weathered 2 attempts to get rid of the case that have gone all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, where we prevailed both times. And we're, feeling very, very confident about our chances of success and the validity of our claims in the case. And that's just that alone is a reason to be a NAC member.
Can you give us a very small summary of what the case is? And
Sure. Happy to. The case involves something called the FAIRSY rule, which is this rule that's in and been in for a long time in the network rules that we have to operate under that are put out there by Visa and MasterCard. And they both have a rule that says you, the ATM operator, cannot charge a higher surcharge to the end user when they're using a Visa or MasterCard network to complete the transaction than you would charge on that same transaction if some other network was being used. So it's also known as the no differential surcharge rule, non-differential surcharge rule, or no different surcharge rule. So that's why all ATMs have the same surcharge on all transactions that they have different surcharges between ATMs, but on each individual ATM, there's one surcharge that consumers pay for their transactions. And that's why, because you can't charge more for a Visa or network handled transaction than you do for a Shazam network handled transaction. There are 18 or so other debit networks that can handle these transactions in addition to Visa and MasterCard. Many of them pay the ATM operator a higher interchange. That's what's really involved, at a certain level here. And they do that by charging a lower network fee. Because interchange, there are 2 ways that ATM operators receive money as their base. I mean, there's advertising and other emerging opportunities, but the base business is surcharge on your transactions to the consumer and interchange that you receive from the issuing bank of the cardholder who did the transaction at your ATM. And one of the main reasons we got this case started all those years ago was Visa and MasterCard set about cutting the interchange payments in half. They used to be more like 50 cents a transaction, and everybody was happy with that for years. And then these factors came into play where they needed to grab some money, and they said, hey, we can just cut these in half, and there's nothing they can do about it, because to run an ATM, you must provide access to Visa and MasterCard cards. They must carry networks in that regard. So they know that. They cut the interchange, and they were going to take it to zero, and that's when we filed the case, when they got to about halfway.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. And we stopped them in their tracks. They stopped cutting it at that point. Now, they came back years later and have, because this has taken so long, and we don't have an injunction, unfortunately, in place. So they've come back, especially MasterCard in recent memory, came back and put in a brand new, out of the blue. They pulled it out of their, a 10-cent ATM charge.
Last year.
Basically taking 10 cents of your interchange, which might have averaged around 17 cents for most smaller operators at that point. And so grabbing 10 cents of it was really bad. And in a normal market space, you would increase the surcharge to make up that loss because that's your only other revenue source. But you can't do that here unless you do it across the board on all your transactions. You can't go, specify use of another network and get a better interchange. That's another thing, the so-called global networks have, really put a lot of pressure on issuers to, set up their cards and their accounts with their cardholders to mandate that the transactions go to Visa, MasterCard, as opposed to being routed as they could to other networks. There's, some small segment of the transactions that we still, have routing control over. But this has led to a recent major antitrust case by the government, by the Justice Department against Visa for anti-competitive monopolization of the debit card market. And we in the ATM business are a poster child for that principle. From what I'm telling you now, when they take half of your revenue stream for no good reason and you can't do anything about it. And in fact, when they cut it, all the data shows that there was no reduction in the traffic that went to them, right? So it's really pretty much of a slam dunk case, but they have all the money in the world to fight it, and they've used every single opportunity to delay the inevitable in this case all these years. But they're about out of rope, about at the end of the gangplank, and hopefully we're going to see this resolved soon.
So if we push forward and let's say this is resolved, do you foresee interchange being a little bit higher?
Yeah, that's, as there are two aspects to the case. One is the class action damages portion of the case,
yes,
which all ATM operators who've been in business since October 1st of 2007 through last week, November 5th of 2025, are included in the class. And as a matter of fact, there has been a mailing that has just gone out to all ATM operators. Everyone should have received it. Check your spam if you didn't see it. And it'll also be in some publications, basically telling all ATM operators that this case is happening and that if you are an ATM operator who operated in that period of time, you are included in the class and your rights will be determined by the outcome of this litigation. And therefore, the court is giving you 60 days if you wanted to opt out of the case and pursue your claims individually on your own, which no one in their right mind is going to do other than perhaps the very largest one or two operators. In the merchant case, there were lots of big box stores that opted out of that litigation. We don't have that here. So, it's already been 14 years, 15 years fighting the thing. So, but the court has to give everyone an opportunity to opt out. So if you don't want to be, part of this class and have your rights resolved in this case, then you can opt out. You have till January 4th to do that, 60 days from November 5th. Otherwise, you're automatically included in the case. There's nothing you need to do per se to be included. However, if you did not receive the postcard or an email or a letter or any other notice that came directly to you, and pay attention, to how it was addressed, the name, who it went to, and what the company was to make sure they've got that right. But if you didn't get anything, or if you got something and it really didn't come to the right person or exactly the right company, the notice itself includes, and we just put out an e-blast with this notice in it to all our members. It's another example of why it's very good to be a member of NAC. And in the notice, it gives you an 800 number to call. The class counsel has been in touch with the court-appointed, claims administrator in the case. Every class action has a court-appointed claims administrator to administer the claims in the case, to resolve any disputes where multiple parties are making the same claim for entitlement, and the same TID for the same month, situation here, and just to administer the thing. And that's who sent out this notice. That's who the 800 number is. It has NAC's name on it because the case is named NAC versus Visa et al. But it's not NAC that sent this out. It's not NAC that's whose number that is. That's the class action court-appointed administrator in the case. And you can call them if you didn't get it and tell them, hey, I'm an ATM operator. I operated between, October of 2007 and now, and I didn't get the thing, so you need to add my company to the list, okay? And they should, there was some confusion about that, but we've spoken with them, and they should now understand they need to just add you to the list. But whether or not you're on the list at the moment ultimately isn't going to matter, because, it's better to make sure if you can, that all your companies are on the list. They have the names and everything right, so that you get all the future notices going to the right place, and you get them right directly.
It's all that in the website as well?
No, there's a good bit of information in the e-blast that we just put out, but I'm giving you more detail here, a good bit more. And in fact, in the email, we refer to the fact that we are going to make my firm, which is the firm that manages NAC, does legal and consulting work. We're going to be available at a very minimal, favorable rate to help individual companies make sure they get everything they're entitled to out of this case. It's important to understand there hasn't been a final decision in the case. We haven't settled it yet. It hasn't gone to trial yet. This is on the precipice of trial, letting people know they have an opportunity to opt out. Having said that, our damages are in the billions at this point in the case. And if you go to trial and you're Visa and MasterCard and you lose, you will pay 3 times that damages amount. So it's a very significant risk that is being taken. And we have a very, very solid case. Our counsel feels very, very strongly about the case, and has prosecuted this thing steadfastly for almost 15 years now. So it's the real deal, and we're going to win. And this is not one of these class actions that, where the attorneys make all this money and the parties don't. You get a $5 coupon or something. No. Here, the goal is to ascertain the damages of the class, which, in full number, as I say, are in the billions. Obviously, settlement, is you're going to get something to a number less than that, because you're going to meet somewhere in the middle. But, it's a significant number that I wouldn't risk rolling the dice on in this situation. And so, I think looking at other cases like this, and the fact that the government has a significant case pending against Visa that this is not helpful with, and all these other factors in place, I think there's a good chance the case will settle, as many of these do, in the next year. If not, we'll go to trial and we'll continue to win, and it'll cost the defendants a significant amount more if we have to do that. But ultimately, you want to be, plugged in on this. You want to be part of the class. And you'll be able to engage me and my firm, and, we'll watch this thing like a hawk for you, and make sure if you engage us that you're assured of being on top of it and getting everything you're supposed to out of it, which we anticipate will be quite significant, depending obviously on how many ATMs you operate and how long you've been in the business.
Will you say this is one of the most challenging decisions that you have faced as an executive director?
I would, in terms of initiating the case. When you take something like this on, you better be serious about it, and you better be ready to see it through. I don't think we anticipated it taking quite this long, but we knew, we're fighting Goliaths with unlimited funds here. And, but not, I was really starting to say there were 2 parts of the case. What I was describing up to now is the damages portion. NAC is not an ATM operator. I'm not an ATM operator, so we get nothing out of the case. monetarily. This is all for you guys, the ATM and gals, the ATM operators of America. What we're in the case for is the injunction, which is to have the rules declared invalid going forward. We try to get the injunction. It's very, very difficult to get one before the case is tried. But, we're in there for the injunction as part of the final ruling in the case. And we think that in the big long-term picture, as significant as the monetary recovery should be, the bigger picture is getting on a fair basis with respect to the networks that are handling our transactions from the ATMs to allow us to give the best possible end user surcharge and not be having to increase those surcharges to make up for the fact that we're getting no monetary contribution from all the banks that we are helping. Because when we put our ATMs out, we're giving access to all their cardholders to access their funds and do their business. And there should be some payment to the originating terminal and terminal owner for doing that. That's why Interchange was there in the first place. And that's still a valid situation. The networks, meaning the global networks, especially Visa, have tried to push things very much in the other direction. And, they want to get rid of Interchange and make us have to put everything on the end user surcharge. And, we're fighting not just for ourselves, but for the consumers. And in that regard, there were 2 consumer class actions filed on the foothills of after we filed our case on the same fact pattern, same abuse, and the same rules that we're challenging. One of those class actions was on behalf of the consumers who used bank ATMs and were overcharged. And the other were on behalf of consumers who use non-bank independent ATMs. It's really a misnomer to say non-bank because all ATMs are banks.
Yeah.
Right. So they're all tied to banks, but our ATMs versus the others. So unlike us, we just sued Visa and MasterCard. That was enough to bite off. And, strategically, we did not sue the big banks. The consumers, however, sued both Visa, MasterCard, and the big banks, meaning, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase. So the consumer class of consumers who use the bank ATMs have settled with the big banks and Visa over the last couple of years. They settled with the big banks, I think in 23, for approximately $67 million in their case. Then Visa and MasterCard settled with them more recently. Between the 2 of them, I think it was 197 or 192 million that they paid. And so between them, it was about 260, 270 million. In those cases are consumer class actions, and that's where the consumer gets a $5 certificate probably. Yeah. How much in surcharge, would one consumer have been overcharged, et cetera. It's not going to be a lot of money. But the attorneys will make good money, as they should. They've fought the case also for 14 years. But it's notable that they've, settled. It's kind of an acknowledgement by the defendants that there is liability here. And that number is, in our view, well below anything we would even consider accepting in the settlement context because, ours is real money and it's real companies that have been harmed to the tune of the damages that we're presenting in the case because our interchange was cut in half all these years. So we need, to settle this case, it's going to have to be a fair and significant number. And otherwise we'll go to trial and it'll be that number times 3.
Can we ask more questions about regulations and stuff? I have this question here.
Sure.
What are the most significant regulatory challenges currently facing ATM operators, independent ATM operators?
It's an excellent question. And it really ties in, Franco, to, some of the other things we've talked about in terms of the future and what, where both the opportunity and the challenge to the business. And so the first thing that comes to mind is the impact of regulation, adverse impact on banking services availability to ATM operators. That is the single biggest issue, I believe, that has hampered new entrants into the business. If you're a veteran operator, maybe that doesn't bother you as much, not to have more new competition. But if you're, thinking about the business and keeping the industry alive as an industry, you've got to have new blood, and youth, and vigor coming in. So, we're very supportive of having a very positive environment to keep, people in the business. And folks that have worked with new entrants to the business have, presented very compelling data that shows hundreds and hundreds of, companies who wanted to be ATM operators who've been thwarted and prevented from doing it because they couldn't get a bank account, or the banking situation was so onerous that, they couldn't do the business. So that's been one of the main issues that we have fought ever since 2013, 2014, and are still fighting to this day. And it's been, I have to say, in my 45 years of fighting major issues like this on various fronts and various industries, I've never seen anything so pernicious and difficult to stop than what's happened to us, which is up until 2013 or 14, it was not a problem to get a bank account as an ATM company. No problem. It's a good situation, positive relationships. We help the banks, take cash off their hands, get it out of the branch. They don't have to pay an armored carrier to carry it away, which is the other alternative. And a lot of very good, close relationships came about between branch staff and ATM company staff, and et cetera. Everything was rocking along. And then came the, Obama administration's efforts to counter the fact that it couldn't get anything done with Congress. And because they were at such odds, they had to resort to using, in our case, the federal executive banking power they had. And they realized that they could, quote, choke off businesses through that they didn't like. Politically disfavored businesses could be dealt with through denial of banking services. Couldn't get a bank account, you couldn't be in business. And so they started this campaign that, had a list. I think the FDIC was the one that put out this list of so-called high-risk businesses that banks should be wary of banking, and that would create, quote, reputational risk, close quote, and an actual risk to bank these people. And it included everything from gun dealers, ammo dealers, to annuity seller companies, to one of the things on the list was cash-intensive businesses. So ATMs were not on the list, but cash-intensive businesses were. And surprise, surprise, who would have ever thought that the ATM business would be a cash-intensive business?
Wow.
Wow, what a shock. And of course, we're the only business whose only product is cash, right? So we should be unique, and we're all bank-sponsored, and we should be totally out of this picture, which is why we weren't listed directly. But just because we're cash intensive, we got roped into Operation Choke, and it started becoming more and more and more of a problem. We started fighting it. We got Congress involved. We went and met with FinCEN, the financial crime regulators for the Treasury Department. We met with the FDIC. I met personally with the comptroller of the currency himself, who runs the OCC, which is the main the regulatory agency that regulates all the big banks. I met with 3 of the comptrollers. There's, with political changes, the comptroller changes to address this. And everyone agreed we shouldn't be having this problem, but couldn't do anything about it. Ultimately, it took literally moving mountains. It took the bipartisan leadership in Congress to schedule meetings with all the banking agencies. We had Zoom calls, which I was on with them, going over this, to get the so-called FFIEC manual fixed. That's this manual that all the bank auditors use to audit the banks and look at so-called high-risk accounts. And it started out in the section on us, which used to be called private ATM operators. It's now called independent ATM companies or something like that. But it started out saying we're high risk of money laundering and fraud. And right there, if you're a banker, you want nothing to do with that, you know. And then it went on, and all these misstatements about the business, including that statement that there was money laundering and fraud. But it started the spiral of us getting denied bank accounts and thousands of people getting cancellation letters that their bank accounts canceled. And all of us operators now worrying that you could, any day you go to get your mail, there could be a cancellation letter in there. So it's a terrible situation, but we got that manual completely changed.
Nice.
We got that language completely removed. It no longer says that we're high risk of money laundering and fraud. It now says we are, valuable businesses providing cash access in otherwise underserved areas, which is the God's honest truth. We've gotten them to see the truth of it. I was invited to serve on the Atlanta Fed's Special Committee on Payments Inclusion, which reiterated the same thing, that we're an important part of the economic system of America and serving areas and people who would otherwise, be in a bad situation. So the sad truth is, though, that even though it's gotten some better since we got that manual changed about 2 years ago, it's still a problem. And the only good news is one of our 3 current bills in Congress, which is technically it's not our bill exactly, but it's doing what we need it to do for us. If we can get it passed, is the Fair Access to Banking Act, been introduced in the House and the Senate. Problem with the bill is it's all Republicans on the bill. And ultimately, to get anything done now, you have to be bipartisan, which our other bills that are our bills are bipartisan. Mm-hmm. But this bill is not. But the fact is it's gotten up to Congress to understand that this is a problem. Their focus is on denial of banking services for conservatives, meaning people and organizations that are conservative, which the Republicans do not like. And, the Democrats have urged a lot of these banks to, deny banking services. If you, continue to bank the gun dealers, we're going to, increase your taxes, or, that kind of thing has come from Democrats. So neither party has clean hands on this. But the reality is, both parties, the people with any sense in both parties realize this is wrong and it's got to change. So even though that bill is Republican, the effort that I described a minute ago for us was totally bipartisan. We had Mr. Lukenmeyer, a high-ranking member of the Financial Services Committee in the House, Republican, conservative. He's from Missouri, was from Missouri. He's left the Congress, unfortunately, with a lot of other good people. But he himself was a bank auditor, and his family are bankers. So he was very effective for us, Republican. And he worked with Carolyn Maloney and others, and she was the ranking Democrat on the committee. She also got knocked out in a weird redistricting thing that had her have to run against Jerry Nadler, the first ever chairman of both committees having to run against each other. And he won. So, but the point is there's a bill in Congress to address the denial of banking services. And this has been followed up just recently with a presidential order from President Trump saying the banks cannot use reputational risk any longer to deny banking services to us. So, there's progress being made, but it's still a big problem, especially for new entrants. Folks who've been in the business, it's a little easier to deal with.
Would I say if my son wants to start his own business, ATM business account, can he walk into a big box right now, or we're not there yet?
No, if you go into Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or Chase today, in virtually every case, and you tell them, I'm an ATM company, I'd like to open an account do my vault cash, they'll show you the door. It's gotten to the point where banks are threatening merchants that they're going to close the merchant's account if they continue to have an ATM in the store.
Or for receiving commissions.
And they don't even own, and they don't even load. We've had those situations. come to my attention.
Yeah.
It's gotten completely out of control, and it's very harmful to the nation because this is hurting our industry. It increases the costs of doing business. Now, what has NAC done? We have gotten a couple of banks, but there's one that's really active right now, who will issue a bank account to an ATM operator happily anywhere in the country.
Those are the guys that are based here in Colorado Springs, correct?
No, that was Rocky Mountain Bank you're thinking of, and yes, they worked with us and they've come to our conferences, and they have a program to bank you, and they were the first to work with us to do this. They actually stepped in when MetaBank, now known as Pathward, who's one of the largest sponsor bank in the industry, decided that they were going to suddenly end the program they had created, that they had to create because of Operation Choke Point. Even though they didn't want to, they had to, do this program for depository accounts in addition to their bank sponsorship accounts. And then they decided they wanted out, and I was able to get Rocky Mountain Bank to come in and pick that up. And they did a good job. Miles McClure is the banker there, and I would highly recommend talking to them if you were in need of a bank. But he wasn't at our show, I don't believe, this year, and he hasn't been quite as active as he's been the last couple of years for whatever reasons. But we've been able to get another bank now, which is, I want to say, Security First, or First Security, something like that. I should know the name by heart, I apologize. But they're based up in Virginia, and they are knocking it out of the park right now. People are giving me tremendously positive feedback on them, and they love the program. They like our industry. They want to help our industry. They'll work with you for new operators to kind of ease you into the program and give you, better fees and stuff like that. So definitely you want to talk to them, and you can thank NAC for that as a backstop.
Thank you. I would say just for our listeners, because this is for independent operators and for anybody that wants to get in the business, if you don't mind providing that email me that information, and that way I can put it in the notes so people will have access to those financial institutions. I think that'll be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
As well as my contact information.
Yeah. I think I'll ask you just a couple more questions. I don't want to be past the 45-minute mark. You're giving us valuable information. One question that I have here is cash truly disappearing, or is it a narrative that has been overblown?
Another great question. It's a narrative that's been overblown. I mean, it's something we need to take very seriously and keep our eye on closely. There are certainly reports of transaction volumes dropping in the industry. So some of that, I think, is due to the fact that it's become a mature industry, and there's more and more ATMs out there, to divide up whatever traffic is available. And then there are situations like we're experiencing right now in California, for instance, and other states, but I know for sure in California, really badly with the immigration crackdown. People are afraid to go out. People who are undocumented workers, there's millions of them in the country, and certainly millions in California, where these folks used to be customers of the bodegas and the C-stores that our machines handled. They do, their business in a cash economy. And these were an important part of our business. And now they're afraid to go out and be seen because they're afraid somebody's going to come and sweep them up and put them in a van and haul them away somewhere, which is terrible. But this has resulted in significant drops in traffic from the reports I've received in California. So, there are those anomalies out there. But, I talk to a lot of ATM operators, and things are very, very much stable. The most recent Fed report, the Fed puts out a report that we study, and we typically have a speaker from the Fed at our conference each year to give the report. And it's basically a survey. They do a diary of 3,000 or 4,000 people, and they get their cash versus other types of spending habits over recent months. How many transactions did you do? How did you pay for them? Cash, card, credit, debit, ACH, all the different payment types. And this most recent report that just came out in April, a few months ago, was extremely encouraging with respect to cash. It basically had shown, and it talked a lot about this, that cash had reached whatever kind of reduction that it had seen due to COVID. That was the other main factor I forgot to mention a moment ago. Is I should have said this initially. There's a war on cash underway. Okay, Visa and MasterCard make $1 trillion on the big banks, $1 trillion a year on their merchant fees. If they were successful in getting rid of cash and converting that all to their transactions, card-based transactions, there's another $1 trillion to be made.
Wow.
So there is a major incentive for them to get rid of this, which we've seen Visa offering small businesses $10,000 to go cashless. We've seen the CEO of Bank of America publicly state that they support, B of A supports a cashless society. So, a lot of banks would like to see cash go away. Visa, MasterCard would like to see cash go away. I'd say a lot of quarters within law enforcement would like to see cash go away because they tie it to crime. Of course, now they're tying crypto to crime also. So, cash may turn out to be better in their minds than crypto is. But still, there's this unholy alliance between the big banks, Visa, MasterCard, and law enforcement. So when COVID came along, they jumped on it to get the totally false rumor out there that cash was, causing the spread of COVID. I did intensive research, and we put out papers and talked to, all the agencies and everybody that we could to debunk that notion. In fact, American currency is made of linen and silk. So anyway, whatever it's made of, it's very fibrous. And it actually, while it has all kind of germs on it and drugs and whatever else they found on the thing, it stays on it because of the nature of the fiber of which it's constructed. The tests they've done all show that it doesn't transmit off the bill onto your hand.
There you go.
Nearly as much as a plastic charge card or your phone.
Wow.
Those things are hard surfaces, and the bad stuff sits on there and easily comes off on your fingers. Not so on a bill. So it was completely false, but they spent millions, who knows how much to get that, to jump on that and try to get people to not use cash and be afraid of cash. And so that, I think, has contributed also to the drop in transactions. But the reality is cash isn't going away anytime soon. It's going to be around a long, long time. The bottom line result of this most recent Fed finding is whatever drop has come along from COVID or whatever else has bottomed out, because the cash percentage usage of cash is remaining static now for the last several years of their measure.
Interesting.
And if you look at it, cash is a very significant percentage of all transactions and all payments types under $25. That's where our sweet spots are.
Yeah.
Right? Big transactions, nobody's going to buy a car with cash these days, et cetera. But you want to tip somebody, you want to get a pack of gum or a beer or whatever it is, nice to have a few bucks in your pocket and pay with cash, and people are still doing that, including youth. And they're seeing, a lot of signs that the youth have seen cash now as a way to budget themselves better, control their spending, and not have to pay higher fees.
Yeah.
Card credit, the 3% that everybody's now charging when you use a card.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have to keep our eye on it. Maybe one day, you never say never, but all the indications are for at least, the coming years, cash is going to be just fine. Now, what's going to happen is, and what is happening is, you got to be more on your game to do the ATM business. You were asking earlier about the regulations. It is becoming and will become and has become more, I don't know, red tape-ish, or, you have to fill out more paperwork to get and keep your bank account, to maintain your relationships with your processor and sponsor bank. You have to, do compliance stuff. And so, yeah, it's more of a pain and there's cost to it. That's the bad news. The good news is those who can do it and run the business well are going to be those left standing, and there'll be fewer folks out there, frankly, who can do this stuff, and more of an opportunity. I work with a lot of companies, both as their attorney and through NAC as their association. And there are plenty of, very successful ATM companies out there, small businesses making good money, having good careers, and looking to a good future.
The next question is in regards to what inspired you to get involved in the ATM industry. I can hear it and I can see it, but if there's like a summary that you can tell us why, that would be great.
It was kind of a natural evolution for me from my prior position. I went after being an attorney and, representing all kinds of telecommunications and technology businesses of every type. I went in-house with one of my favorite clients, which started out as People's Telephone and grew from a very small company up to the largest payphone company in America. Publicly traded company. We, counted hundreds of millions of dollars in coins a year. We were in 44 states with, lots and lots of adjunct businesses. And then, and of course we were very involved in the National Trade Association, the American Public Communications Council in that case. And at one point I was head of it and ran it. We were always very active in it. But then, along came wireless. And as, things started winding down in the payphone business, and that's a whole nother story because it was a governmental action there that ultimately put the nail in the coffin of that business. It was the Obama phone, where the government gave, every underprivileged family a free phone to use. And that was kind of the remaining base of that business. So that really was the nail in the coffin. But ultimately, the industry generally, the payphone industry providers, started morphing more and more into doing other businesses at the locations, including, air vac, the air machines and the vacuum machine there. Some were doing like ice cream freezer, ice cream services,
water machines,
all kinds of stuff. Water machines, ice machines, and ATMs. Yeah. And so we actually started an association to represent all those things. And it started out as a Southeast regional association called the ASCPA, the Association of Specialized Communications Providers. And it included all those businesses, the payphone business, the ATM business, the airvac business. But over time, it became clear that the business that was really most in need of an association and, that was the most real future business as an industry was the ATM business. So it all kind of came together. And then ultimately, as we were winding down, the public company, it ultimately, we sold to a wireless company who tried to make a play of it. But, I was asked to help form NAC and run, this association. And that all just came together at, the same time. And it was a natural kind of thing to say, sure, give it a shot. So we did that, and we filed our lawsuit and started out from nothing. And we've grown it into, a very significant political voice for ATM operators now throughout the country.
It's been great. I've been at the conferences a few times. Good. This last year I was not able to make it, but the times that I've been there is valuable. It's absolutely valuable. From the speakers to the lunch, listening to everybody. It's been great.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. We work literally throughout the whole year, a lot of dedicated people to put that thing on. And it's just exactly for that purpose, to come and for you to be able to learn and network and have a good time. And we're going to do it again next year.
Yeah.
We're excited to say we're going to Paris.
There you go.
Las Vegas, not Paris, because we're a U.S. organization. So we're going to Paris, Las Vegas, which is one of a lot of people would say the nicest spot on the Strip in Las Vegas.
Good.
We love it. We've never had a show there. We've had the opportunity for our people to stay there, but we've never actually put on, the conference itself in Paris. So that's going to be this year in October, middle of the month, middle of the week. So very easy to get to without hurting your business situation.
So you're just raising the bar every year.
Exactly. We're trying to, every year we do try to raise it, but just kind of keep it up with what we've been doing the last few shows. This last one you missed was really great. It was at Caesar's Palace. A lot of people said to me it was our best ever.
Oh, wow.
So we want to keep hearing that each year.
No, it's great. Every time that I've been there, it's been great. And Bruce, this time that you've given us, it's been great. It's been wonderful. I hope that we can have you again. It's been a wealth of knowledge.
My pleasure.
I appreciate your time. And if somebody needs to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you, Bruce?
I'm very easy to reach. You can email me at bruce@natmc.org. That's N as in Nancy, ATM, C as in Charlie.org. My name, Bruce. Or call me on my mobile, 904-710-3522. And if I can't take it then, I'm usually pretty good about getting right back to you.
Bruce, again, thank you very much, and hopefully we see you in Vegas next year.
My pleasure. Thank you, Franco, for having me. Look forward to seeing you then, and let's do some more podcasts together.
There you go.
It's great that you're getting this info out there to all the folks.
Thank you.
Take care and have a great holiday season if we don't
You too.
see each other soon.